and I just felt compelled to share this with you. So I'm gonna play a little. I'm gonna show you the comments, and then I'll be right back.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey, and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and television shows all over the world. In a recent video on his Instagram page, actor and podcaster Taylor Lautner opened up about cyberbullying. He talked about how he recently got some very unkind messages on an interview video. He talked about how it used to affect him versus how it affects him now. But what do his body language, facial expressions, and word choice reveal? And more importantly, what can we learn from this video on how to handle moments where we feel like something is affecting our self-confidence? Let's dive right in.
Hey guys, I just got back from a run. I was feeling really good about myself. Trying to stay healthy, both physically and mentally. And I felt compelled to share something with you because when I got back from that run, I hopped on Instagram. I read a post from last week when Tay and I were in New York to do press about the squeeze, and we went on this show, and they recently posted about it, and I was going through the comments, and it brought up old feelings and memories why I don't look through comments. But I'm in a different place now, and I just felt compelled to share this with you. So I'm gonna play a little. I'm gonna show you the comments, and then I'll be right back. So those comments are all from one single post, which is crazy, but that's the world we live in, and there's only so much we can do to change it.
So I want to start by talking about the major reason this video got my attention, because as we scroll sometimes through videos, we give it a couple of seconds before we decide to go to the next one. But within the first couple of seconds of this video, there's a big incongruence that, as someone who studied facial expressions and behaviors, I went, oh, wait a second, this is going to take a turn. So this key moment has two incongruences. One is physical and the other one is verbal. And they happen at the same time. Let's start with the physical one. So this is seconds into the video. He says, just got back from a run and I was feeling really good about myself. And he's going to go on to say both physically and mentally. But at the moment where he says, I was feeling really good about myself, his eyebrows go like this. They furrow. Furrowed eyebrows don't have a specific meaning in and of themselves. They can happen in a lot of different circumstances. For example, sometimes in deep thought, when we're concentrating on something, we might see the eyebrows come down and closer together. However, they appear very commonly in two universal emotions. The universal emotions are highly researched emotions that studies have found look more or less the same pretty much anywhere in the world. And the two that have furrowed eyebrows are anger, like when we're angry at something or someone, or disgust, when we're disgusted. So typically, eyebrows down and closer together is not an overwhelmingly positive thing. For example, think about how off it would feel if I was trying to say something very positive, but my eyebrows were down and together like this. So if I were to say like, hey guys, great to see you, I'm so happy, I'm having a great day, it just doesn't really look right. So in that moment, as he's saying, I just got back from a run, I was feeling really good about myself, and we see that flash of the eyebrows coming down together like this, it seems incongruent. Like you're talking about a positive experience, something you were doing that made you feel good about yourself. And even as I'm saying it now, I have, my eyebrows want to go up as I'm talking about how good this was. But in his case, they went down. The second incongruence is a tense shift. So he changed verb tenses while he was talking. And this is something that I listen for a lot when I'm reading people, because it could signal a change even when the person isn't conscious that they're doing it. So right in the beginning, he starts by saying, I just got back from a run. Now he kind of says it really fast. He kind of mutters the got back, so it sounds like I just got back from a run. But that's what he's saying. I just got back from a run. That is simple past. The action is over. I just got back from a run. I'm done running. But then he shifts and he says, I was feeling really good about myself. That's past continuous. It implies that that action isn't over. It kind of implies a but. I was feeling good about myself, but something. So to say something in the past would be, I just got back from a run. It felt great. That's it. It's all over. But when you have that shift going, I got back from a run, the run is over, I was feeling good about myself, but something happened to that feeling good about myself. So when I saw that incongruence with the eyebrows during a positive statement, with that shift going from simple past to past continuous, within the first couple of seconds, we know that something's going to happen. There's a twist here. This isn't the happy story that's being set up from this positive run. Next up, I want you to pay attention to what happens to his blink rate while he says he was feeling good both physically and mentally. So the average blink rate is between 14 to 21 blinks per minute. It really varies person to person. Some are higher than that, some are lower. That's just a very rough average range. If we look at his blink rate throughout this video, I would say it's more or less towards the lower end of that. He doesn't have a very high blink rate, but in that moment, when he talks about how he was feeling good physically and mentally, we see that blink rate go really up for a couple of seconds. I wouldn't say it's a flutter, because an eye flutter is a very rapid brrr like this. It's not that, but in those couple of seconds, he blinks a lot. Boom, 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 boom. So what causes our blink rate to increase suddenly? One of two things. Either it's stress, because when we're stressed, the eyes dry up and blinking more corrects that. But second, when we're processing a lot of information, we tend to blink a lot. There's quite a bit of research on that when we're committing things to memory, locking things in, that blink rate tends to go up. We also see this in pre-aggression. Before someone's gonna get angry or they're getting worked up, we tend to see a lot of blinks, and it probably has to do with processing as well. Think about it. As we're getting worked up, we might be processing our emotions and our thoughts, trying to figure out how we're gonna handle this, even trying to maybe calm ourselves down, so that blink rate goes up. And in this moment, I think that's pretty much exactly what it is. I think he was having a great day, it was positive, and he's still kind of processing how that was ruined by something unpleasant. So I think as he's shifting from the positive to the negative in this moment, he's processing both the emotion and the information of that shift in his mood, in his day. There's another moment in this intro where my instinct as a mentalist kicked in. So as a mentalist, I get on stage and I entertain audiences with my ability to read people using both trickery and psychology. So often there are certain things I know through trickery, but as I'm revealing those things or the person's talking to me about those things, I catch little things in their behaviors which contribute to my read and really makes it feel like I'm in their head and I know what they're thinking. And there was a moment like that in this opening. So I want you to notice when he says that him and his wife, Tay, were talking about their podcast, The Squeeze, on this show, notice a few things. First of all, he doesn't say the name of the show that they were on. Now, this could be for a couple of reasons. It could be because he doesn't want his fans to go to that show's social media page and start blasting them because of their viewers who were being mean to Taylor Lautner. And I might believe that that's the reason he didn't say the name of the show, if all it was him not saying the name of the show. But there's a few other things. Notice how once again, in that moment, his eyebrows kind of go downwards like this on this show. We also have two things happening with his head as he says this show. One is what we call a chin jut or chin thrust. That's when the chin goes forward like this as we're talking. And this is usually a pretty negative sign. In fact, we look for this in pre-aggression. Like before someone gets physical, we might often see this kind of chin thrusting forward. It's the subconscious mind kind of going at the person, like a subconscious attack. The second thing is this no gesture. As he says this show, we said chin come forward as his head goes no. Now, my regular viewers know that I don't give much importance to no gestures because they can happen in so many circumstances. Sometimes they even happen in positive situations. Like someone who has a great day and they tell you, oh my God, I had the best day ever. And they might do this because they can't believe how good their day was. This is quite common. So normally if this is alone, I don't give it much importance. But in this case, it's not alone. There's a bunch of other stuff happening as he's going this show and he's doing this gesture. finally, notice how he says this show. There's a cadence shift in that specific moment. He goes, we went on this show. It's like he's throwing that word.
And we went on this show.
So there's quite a bit here. He's not saying the name of the show. We're seeing the eyebrows. We're seeing that chin come forward. We're seeing that no gesture. He's kind of throwing that word as opposed to just saying, I went on this show, or naming the show. And it leads me to believe that there was some sort of negative experience between him and this show. I don't know if it was on set. I don't know if it was afterwards. I don't know if it's him right now seeing how they just left all those negative comments up there. So maybe he would have wanted someone on their team to, manage that a little bit more. I'm not really sure, but due to that cluster, I would have a feeling that there's some sort of negative feeling towards that show. There's also no shout out to the show saying, you guys should go check it out. It was great. However, there was a few comments, blah, 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 whatever. It's almost like he's not plugging the show. He's not talking about the show. And when he mentions it, there are a few negative signs there. See, this is what I'm saying. This is how mentalists often operate. If I'm doing my show and I have a spectator come up on stage and they talk to me about a trip that they once took, and I see this kind of the chin coming out and the eyebrows furrowing, and they kind of throw this trip out there and they're ambiguous about the destination, I might make note of that, and later in my reading I might say, by the way, this trip you went on, I'm getting that there was a conflict there or some sort of negative experience. And often these are the things that get the biggest reactions because nobody could have known that. Next up, I want to talk about a decision that he made that is quite telling and interesting. And it's the fact that he decided to display the comments, to take those negative comments and give them a platform, his platform, to show these negative comments. And first off, not that it matters, I think that they're all wrong. They're talking about how he hasn't aged well and talking about his physicality. And I think they're wrong for many reasons. First, we're going to talk about this later in the video, but it's no one's business to talk about how he's aged or how he looks physically. None of anyone's business. But second, I think they're just flat out wrong. I really don't think he's aged that badly. I think he's a good looking guy. So I think these comments are very unwarranted and unmerited. But that's not the point. The point is he decided to display them. And I think that speaks to his self-confidence and to what extent these comments might hurt him in the sense that, well, that's a mean thing to say, but I don't think they actually shake his confidence deeply. And the reason for that is because he's displaying them. He's putting them, he's immortalizing them on his own Instagram. So when we're actually affected by something actually emotionally affects us, we do something called psychological distancing. In our language, in our behaviors, we put distance between us and those things. In this case, it's almost like he's psychologically approaching. He's saying, fine, you guys want to be mean like this? Here's a platform. Let the world see how mean you are because you don't affect me. I know you're just a bully. The last thing I want to mention for this clip is something I don't often talk about on the channel, and I've been asked about it in the comments, and I think this is a really good video to talk about it. And that topic is eye accessing cues. So Richard Bandler and John Grinder in their earlier work published the notion of eye accessing cues. And it was this theory that depending on what we're thinking about or how we're thinking about it, our eyes go in different ways. Like, for example, if someone is trying to visually remember something that actually happened, a real memory, their eyes will go up and to the left because they're accessing real images. And if they're making up images, their eyes will go up and to the right because they have to access visual imagination. And the same works with audio, left or right, but not going upwards, and so on and so on. And there have been a lot of articles out there that put a lot of weight on this. And even in my own comments, I see this all the time. Like, people will go, oh, the person in the video looked up and to their right. They're clearly lying. This person's for sure a liar. And to me, that is way off. Eye accessing cues are, in my opinion, at best a generalization. There are no absolutes in body language, least of all where our eyes go when we're recollecting stuff. It's not that simple. Recent research has shown that eye accessing cues are not reliable. Look, again, I'm a mentalist. When I'm on tour, every night I'm on stage, and there are people on stage who are thinking about things that are either made up, that they just made up, or that really happened in their lives. I have spent hours looking at the faces of people who are remembering things or making things up. If there was a pattern where the eyes go every time someone's making something up, believe me, I would have seen it, but it doesn't exist. I've seen all kinds of people recall or make things up in all kinds of different ways. Some people get stuck in one area, whether they're making it up or actually recalling. Some people stare at you straight in your face as they tell you their story. Some people close their eyes. Some people dance around as they try to, figure out or remember what's going on. That being said, there are two things in the space of eye accessing that I give a little more importance to. One of them is if you have a baseline. So if you've observed someone for quite some time and you've noticed that their eyes go a certain place or do a certain thing every time they're telling you something truthful, and then something different happens, you might wonder why. I still wouldn't put that much weight on it, but I'd be curious as to why there's this sudden shift in what we're doing with the eyes. The second thing is the downwards direction. So I don't think that up or left or right can give us much, but I have found that with negative emotions and with inner monologue, when someone's talking to themselves, you're giving yourself a little pep talk, very often we see the eyes go downwards. Now, I'm not saying this is the only thing that could cause eyes to go downwards. I do believe there are people who can recall like this as well, but I have seen that negative emotions, negative experiences, or inner monologue often causes the eyes to go downward. And this makes a lot of sense. We know that with sadness, a lot of things go downwards, not just the eyes, but droopiness, retreating into ourselves, closing up the body language is very common in sadness. We even say it in the way we speak about sadness. You're feeling down. I'm feeling low. Like, we know this. So the eyes going down associated with negativity, I do give a bit more weight to that. Now, the reason I bring this up in Taylor Lautner's case is because both those things are in play. One, we have a pretty good baseline throughout this video of what he does with his eyes. And second, at key moments, we're seeing those eyes go down. So after this clip, the rest of the video that I'm about to play, his eyes spend most of the time looking at the camera and moving around up here. They almost never go down. I think there's maybe one quick moment where they do, but they really don't spend a lot of time going downwards. But in this first part, the part that we just looked at, several times as he's talking, his eyes flash downwards like this. It's very weird how it's only in that beginning while he's talking about how he felt when he saw these comments and he's talking about the comments, but then when he goes on to talk about confidence and how you should feel, it stops happening. So the first time it happens is when he talks about how he hopped on Instagram. So he was having this good day, he got home, he got on Instagram, so a negative thought is entering his mind, and we see those eyes go downwards. It's not straight down, it's down and to our right on our screen. Because I don't know if his video is inverted or not, so it's easier to just say down and to our right.
When I got back from that run, I hopped on Instagram.
Then he says that he wanted to share this. He says, I wanted to share this with you. It happens then.
Felt compelled to share this with you, so.
And all the way at the end when he says, this is the world we live in, it happens again.
But that's the world we live in, and there's only so much we can do.
So in all these moments where he's talking about the comments, or this is the world we live in, these are negative feelings, and we're seeing those eyes go to that same place. And on that last one, as he says, the world we live in, we also see at that very same moment, a mouth shrug. So a mouth shrug is when the lips compress and go up. So the difference is, the way you spot it, is the upper lip, it puffs out a little. So lip compression is this, mouth shrug is this. See, we see that puffy upper lip. So there's a lot of great research about shrugging. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to learn more about it and why we know what we know about it. But any version of shrugging indicates a lack of something. And when it's just the mouth, in other words, it's not this, it's just the mouth going like this, very often it's called an epistemic shrug. And it's basically, I don't know what to say. I don't really know what to add to this. And it's something we often see in shared tragedy. So if you go to like a tragic event, like a funeral or something like that, we often see people greeting each other with like this, like, I wish this was different circumstances. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to add. And that downwards look often follows. So you might see this kind of thing. So in that moment, when he had this, the eyes going down with these comments, and he goes, the world we live in, the eyes go down, and we have that mouth shrug at the same time. To me, it's a pretty clear, nonverbal way of saying, I don't know what to say. It's just the world we live in. It's sad, but it is the way it is. Okay, so when we put all this together, what do we have? We have someone who was having a good, positive day, but there was a shift. Something happened, and he's trying to process those emotions. He's talking to his community with it. He's opening up. We're seeing quite a bit of confidence there because he's actually showing the comments. He's addressing them. He's platforming them. We're also not seeing enormous things closing in. We're not seeing turtling. We're not seeing low confident body language. The body language is pretty confident, but there's moments of negativity there, moments of sadness. So it saddens him, but I don't think it actually makes him deeply unconfident. I think he's at a place in his life where these comments can't actually shake his confidence. And he's going to go on to actually talk about that, to validate that. So now we're going to move on and look at the language of confidence and how he deals with this. And we're going to talk about cyberbullying as well. But before we do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more behavioral analysis and practical psychology content. Also, for regular viewers who want to encourage the channel, I will leave a link in the description where you could find out about the membership and the perks you get when you sign up.
But I think what I really wanted to say is if this was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, maybe even 2-3 years ago, that really would have got under my skin, and it would have caused me to want to just go in a hole and not go outside. Definitely don't do press and interviews and put myself in the position where, I have to see that kind of stuff. But at a certain point, it was not even go out, not go to a grocery store, not go where if I was seen, I could take a picture and it could end up on the internet and I would have to see that stuff. And that was a really unhealthy position to be in. And the reason I was in that position, and the reason it affected me as much as it did, is because my value was in the wrong things. You find value where you put it.
Okay, so here he's talking about how this kind of thing would have made him feel in the past. And there's something really interesting that happened that I'm not sure why it happened. And we're going to talk about it, and I'm excited to read your comments because some of you may be able to understand it better than I did in that moment, because he's quite consistent with it, but it's in one place where I don't know why it's there. So excited to talk to you guys about that. But before, let's get this out of the way. We're talking about universal emotions earlier. These are emotions that are seen more or less the same everywhere in the world. Now, only one of the universal emotions is seen on one side of the face. It's asymmetric, and that is contempt. So when we're feeling contemptuous, we see a line on only one side of the nose as there's a rise in the lips on that side of the face. So sometimes it looks like this, sometimes it looks like this. But whatever the case, it's either a scrunching or a lifting of the lip that causes a line only on one side of the face. Now, I do have to say this every time I talk about universal emotions and contempt and asymmetry, and it's the fact that contempt isn't the only thing in the world that can make an asymmetric expression. Sometimes you could smirk just with one half of the face. Sometimes when you're thinking about something, there might be asymmetry. It's the only universal emotion. In other words, of the emotions that we all experience the same way, it's the only one that's asymmetric. But it is quite distinct nonetheless. So as Taylor Lautner is talking, at some point, he talks about how this would have made him feel in the past, and he says how it would make him not go outside, and he continues to talk about how he wouldn't have done press and how it would have just brought him down. And he does something here that we haven't seen in the rest of this video, and it's the left side of his mouth as he's talking just scrunches up in the moment where he says, not go outside. What's interesting about this moment is, although the mouth is physically flashing that telltale kind of mouth scrunch of contempt, the whole mood in that moment sounds contemptuous. You can even look at the way his cadence is shifting, the way he's kind of spitting these words out a little more. Definitely don't do press, don't go outside.
And not go outside, definitely don't do press and interviews.
And contempt is a feeling of moral superiority when we look down on something. So I think it's very logical. It stands to reason that as he's talking about the way he would have handled this in the past, he's feeling like he's come a long way from there. He's feeling more superior now, and he feels like this is a better way to handle that, and that just wasn't a mentally healthy way to deal with it at all. But here's the other thing that I'm really excited to talk to you guys about and to get your thoughts in the comments, because I'm not really sure why it's happening. So my regular viewers know that I talk a lot about eyebrow flashes. That's when in conversation, the eyebrows just go up like this. Because this is highly researched and it's a big part of human behavior. In fact, research believes that in the way that we evolved, our eyebrows became more mobile to be used socially. We place a lot of importance subconsciously on people's eyebrows, and we pay attention to the movement of those eyebrows. Now I have a whole video on the channel about the research of eyebrow flashes. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to find out more about why we know this. But socially, when I see an eyebrow flash, typically it means one of three things. One is emphasis, like you're emphasizing something. Two is surprise, if something's surprising. And three is social connection or social approval. Like you bump into someone you know, hey, how are you? Good to see you. And all these things have something in common. It's we're giving something importance. Like this is important, that's important, you're important. So we use the eyebrows to signal importance towards something. So Taylor Lautner in that clip has 3 eyebrow flashes, and it makes so much sense with emphasis and importance. So there's a study that found that when we're giving someone directions, instructions, the eyebrow flashes happen just before very important instructions. Like, this is important, pay attention. Notice how that makes so much sense. So right in the beginning when he says, what I really wanted to say, we get an eyebrow flash. Makes perfect sense. Emphasis, this is important. This is what I want to say. The other one comes right at the end when he says,
and the reason I was in that position.
And he's about to say this big important message. Like we know he prepared this statement. It's very consistent that he uses these eyebrow flashes for emphasis, like this is important. In fact, those are the words he says the first time we see it. But there's one eyebrow flash that I'm not entirely sure why it's there, and it has me curious. Because this is not someone who eyebrow flashes a lot as he talks. If it was baseline, I'd be like, okay, it's not that important. It happens at key moments. And it happens when he says, if this had happened 10 years ago. And it makes sense to me. I go 10 years ago. If this happened 10 years ago, I'm like, it's not bothering me. But I'm not entirely sure why it's happening. What is he emphasizing with 10 years ago? So is it emphasis? Like him saying 10 years ago, this would have been different. Like 10 years ago, that was a different thing. I don't know. Is it social connection? Like with us, like 10 years ago, I was very different. You know, so maybe there's a bit of a social element there. I don't see why I would be surprised. Like 10 years ago, that's not very surprising. So I'm not sure. I don't know what's happening there. And it's bothering me. So let me know in the comments if anybody can make sense of that. And please let's remember there are no absolutes, right? Oh, George, for sure this, definitely that. I don't think it's definitely anything. I think it's up for discussion why someone who emphasizes things with his eyebrows is doing it when he says, if this was 10 years ago.
And if you put your value in what other people think of you, that's how you're gonna feel. But if you put your value in you knowing who you are, what's important to you, what you love, that kind of stuff won't get to you. And I'm just so thankful that I am in the place I am today where I can see that. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna say it doesn't bug me. I wouldn't be on here posting this video if it didn't bother me at all. But it doesn't make me question who I am. And it doesn't take anything away from me. So I think my biggest point is just think about and remember where you put your value in life. And also, just be nice. It's not that difficult. Let's be nice to each other. Let's spread love and positivity. It's that simple.
Okay, we're on a bit of an eyebrow flash roll here. There's a few more that happen here. One of them is on, I'm in a place where I can see that now. And I think this is a mix of a couple of things. I think it is emphasis, like I can see that now, but I also think it's very much social connection. Like I'm good, because he's talking to his audience, his adoring fans here, and he's talking about something negative that may have affected him negatively. And I think there's almost an element of comfort to this, of saying, no, I'm good. Believe me, I'm good. Right at the end, he says, just be nice. Just be nice. And his eyebrows go up. And as he continues to talk, they keep dancing a little bit. So it's that eyebrow flash, and then it's kind of moving a little bit more than his baseline. And again here, I think it's, of course, emphasis. Once again, like, just be nice. But again, it has that human element. Let's be nice to each other. So we have the social connection. It's the same way you greet someone with the eyebrows. You go, hey, how are you? Sometimes you don't even need that. Just go, hey, good to see you. It's that human element. There's an interesting callback in that clip to last week's video. So last week's video, we looked at the actor Tom Holland on an interview, and as part of his baseline, whenever he talks about something that he's feeling a little critical towards or giving criticism, he has this squint. And this is quite common when we're critiquing something. And a lot of you in the comments were like, yes, oh my God, we're so familiar with that squint. When someone's being critical, like, what are you doing? You know, we see this kind of squint of like critique. And Taylor did a big one in this clip when he said, that kind of stuff really can't get to you. He does it other times in the clips. I didn't really bring it up, but if you go back, there are other moments where he's critiquing something where he does it, but that's a really big obvious one, especially with that kind of, what we call looking askance, that kind of side eye, that kind of stuff, super critical. I also want to really quickly mention lip licking. So there was one there when he talked about how, you know, I wouldn't be doing this if this didn't bother me at all, and he licks his lips. But licking the lips is pretty baseline for him. It happened quite a bit throughout this short video. And this could be, you know, just stress. When we're stressed, the mouth dries out, and licking the lips helps with that. It could also be grooming. When we lick the lips, it brings more color to the lips, so it makes us look more presentable. But I don't know why it's happening. It's happening regularly enough that I'm not looking at each one and being like, okay, why did that happen there? It's happening a lot throughout the video. So yeah, it's pretty baseline. All right, before we go, let's talk about the general topic at hand here, which is cyberbullying. And I have a lot of strong opinions on cyberbullying. And it's funny because there's a study that comes to mind a lot when I think about cyberbullying. So in this study, the researcher, Clifford Nas, had people learn a lesson from a computer about love and relationships. So they sat down and they listened to this lecture given to them by a computer. And after this was over, they had to give feedback about the lesson, how valuable it was, how good it was, whatever. Now, half the people had to give that feedback into the same computer that just gave them the lesson. The other half went to a different computer that wasn't this one and gave the feedback there. Because the researcher wanted to know, is there a difference? Now, the reason this research really stayed with me is because when I read that, my initial gut was like, what difference could it possibly make? You're just inputting your opinions of a lecture into a computer. But as it turns out, there was a difference. The second group who input their feedback into a different computer were much more critical and much more harsh and much more blunt than the ones who had to put it into the same computer that gave them the lecture. And this taught us a great lesson about human behavior. And that's the fact that we are much kinder to the face of someone, even if that someone is a computer. It turns out that the people didn't want to be mean to the computer's face because, like, this is the computer. I'm going to hurt its feelings if I say it didn't do a good job. But on this separate computer that's not connected to the one that gave me the lecture, I can be very critical. So when people are on their computers or on their phones and they have that privacy and anonymity, sometimes they tend to forget that there's another human with feelings that's on the other side of that content, that is going to see what they're writing. People are infinitely more harsh, more direct, more critical, more opinionated, and less civil when they're alone on a device just typing into a keyboard than when they are actually being social. Listen, I get what Taylor Lautner is talking about. I built most of my career on television and online. Before this YouTube channel, I had another one that I started when I was in my younger 20s, and mean comments that are just there for the sake of being mean. It's not critical. It's not trying to discuss the subject. Just flat out mean comments are everywhere on the internet. And for a while, it bothered the heck out of me because I didn't really understand the nature of where that was coming from. So more than a decade ago, I decided to try something. I told myself, whenever I meet someone that I have respect for, someone that I respect their opinion, their intelligence, who they are as a person, whatever, I respect some element of them, I'm going to ask them, have you ever gone on any content online, regardless of what it is, and left just a negative comment, and that's it, nothing else? And to this day, I've asked hundreds of people. To this day, I haven't found a single person who said yes to that question. Most people that I've asked have said that when they see something they don't like, either they don't watch it, or if they do, they don't like it, they just move on with their lives, and they don't waste time into creating negativity for absolutely no reason. So this gave me a very powerful realization. Although anonymity makes people be more critical, more blunt, more direct, and sometimes even more mean, it also creates a fallacy in the head of the person reading the comment. And that fallacy is that we assume that the person commenting is a well-balanced, intelligent, positive adult. Because, we kind of picture people that we see out in society, when in reality, that's not necessarily the case. There's been quite a bit of research recently on the connection between self-esteem and cyberbullying. As you would probably guess, low self-esteem is a result of cyberbullying. If somebody bullies me online, my self-esteem drops. However, low self-esteem is also the cause of cyberbullying in a lot of cases. People who cyberbully often have very low self-esteem. They often have a hard time socializing and forming bonds in the real world, so they go to the cyber world where they feel like they have a little bit more power because they could put that comment and nobody could say anything. And in a lot of cases, they're just trying to bring others down to their level. And it's really sad. So to anyone who's ever been cyberbullied, or if you create content and you get some negative comments, I want you to realize two things. One, this is just the way the internet is. Once again, because that detachment from the human element, it allows certain people to be ruder and more mean than they would normally be. So just understand, it's not you. You did nothing wrong. This is just something that happens more and more frequently, unfortunately. The second thing I want you to think about is this. When we get these negative comments, and by the way, I'm not talking about an exchange that's negative but intellectual. I'm talking about these comments that have nothing other than an insult. Just this one-liner. They don't contribute intellectually to the conversation. It's just nastiness for the sake of being mean. But try this. If you have a website, if you create content, whatever it is, and you get this nasty comment, very often our reflex is to imagine that this is a well-rounded, intelligent adult. Try to shift that. Think of someone out there that you've met in life or that you've seen in life whose opinion wouldn't matter to you. Shift your perception of who this person is from this person that I respect, therefore their opinion matters, to just this random person who could be yelling out things in the street corner that you really wouldn't put that much value on what they would say to you because they don't know you. And at the end of the day, that's the truth of the matter. So if you're someone you know is out there creating content, putting positivity out, following your passion, maybe you could send them this video. They might find something in here that they'll find valuable. But ultimately, I think the thing to remember is, if we know nothing else about these commenters than the fact that they take pleasure in bringing people down, even if that's all we know about them, this person has nothing in common with you. And therefore, their opinion of you shouldn't really matter. So there it was, some classic body language stuff, and then a little bit about cyberbullying there at the end. I guess just venting some of my opinions as someone who's been uploading on social media for a very long time. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I will see you on the next one.